All right, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep into the Final Destination films.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, we're tackling the horror series that makes you think twice about walking under a construction ladder.
Or driving behind a log truck.
Haha, exactly. You know those movies that make you wonder, what if you could cheat death?
It's a question we all think about, even if just for a second.
And this franchise really digs into it. 5 films, all between 2000 and 2011, each one packed with crazy death scenes.
Not just death, but inventive death. That's what sets this series apart.
Right, like the way they come up with these elaborate scenarios, it's wild.
Well, it's death, but it's playful, too. Not your typical slasher.
It's like instead of a guy in a hockey mask, it's just fate itself coming after you.
And that is way more terrifying when you think about it. No escaping that.
Chilling stuff. But before we get too existential here, let's lay out the basics. How do these movies usually go?
Okay, so the formula. It always starts with a premonition. Someone sees a huge disaster about to happen.
Plane crash, highway pileup, that kind of thing.
Exactly, some kind of big event where a lot of people are gonna die.
But the person having the vision, they escape. Right. And they warn others too.
Yeah, they manage to save themselves and a few others, but that's when the real fun begins.
Fun's one word for it. More like, oh crap, death's coming for us one by one.
Yeah, got it. Death doesn't like being cheated. It becomes this relentless force, picking off the survivors in increasingly creative ways.
So it's like you survive this huge crash, you feel lucky to be alive,
Yeah.
then a week later, you get taken out by a falling sign or something.
It's that irony, that dark humor that makes these movies work. Or some stick with you.
We got to talk about some of the standout death scenes. I know you're a big fan of the log truck from Final Destination 2.
Oh, come on, it's classic. Everyone remembers that scene. It's iconic.
Perfectly captures the whole Final Destination vibe, like everyday object, suddenly deadly.
Right, and then there's the tanning bed scene in Final Destination 3. Just yikes.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't worried about getting trapped in one of those things? They tap into those little anxieties we all have.
Oh, for sure. It's not some supernatural monster you have to imagine. It's stuff that could actually happen.
And they don't shy away from those common fears either. That escalator scene in the Final Destination, pure nightmare fuel.
Speaking of wild twists, we have to mention Final Destination 5. That ending.
Oh man, talk about a mind bender. Prequel to the first film.
Survivors end up on Flight 180, the flight from the very first movie. Full circle.
It makes you rethink the whole series, like maybe fate really is inescapable.
Right, like no matter what you do, it catches up to you. But is it really all about fate?
Yeah, that's the question. I send you that article arguing the Final Destination movies aren't about free will at all.
Yeah, that one was interesting. The idea that the characters only think they're making choices.
But actually, it's all manipulated. Like the movies are setting them up to fail.
Exactly. Like someone or something is pulling the strings behind the scenes.
I mean, think about that log truck scene again. Could the character have actually avoided it?
The article argues no. Says the whole point is that it's all orchestrated, predetermined.
So, is it even really about cheating death? Or is it more about the illusion of choice? Deep stuff.
Yeah, deeper than you'd expect from a series known for, gruesome deaths.
It's more than just a slasher. There's actual thought behind it. Makes you think.
Right. There's a whole psychological aspect, too. Those survivors, they aren't just running from death.
They're dealing with the weight of their choices too, right?
Absolutely. Knowing your actions led to other people's deaths, that's heavy stuff.
Imagine that guilt, that constant fear. It'd mess you up pretty bad.
It's a key element in the franchise, and it's often overlooked.
Because everyone's focused on the crazy death scenes. Understandably.
But the internal struggles, the survivor's guilt, that's just as important to the story.
Makes you think, if you were in their shoes, could you handle that? Knowing the cost of survival.
It's the human element, Makes the horror hit harder, more relatable.
Definitely adds another layer to the whole cheating death thing. It ain't all sunshine and roses.
No kidding. But hey, that's what we're here to explore, right? All the layers of Final Destination.
Let's get into it. It's like they're in this constant state of dread, just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And they try to fight back, They think they can find a way out, a loophole.
But death always seems to be one step ahead, huh? Like a game of cosmic chess.
Exactly. It's unpredictable, keeps the audience guessing, and each death scene is like its own puzzle.
Makes you wonder, could they have avoided it? Did they miss a sign, make the wrong choice?
Oh, for sure. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, even on repeat viewings.
I read somewhere the creators were inspired by those Final Destination urban legends.
Oh, yeah, like the guy who misses his flight, it crashes, he's relieved, then bam, a piano falls on him.
That kind of thing. It makes you think, are these movies just amped up versions of those stories?
Well, they definitely tap into that same primal fear, right? The idea that fate is out to get
At
you.
least you look at everyday life a little differently. Suddenly, pigeons are a threat.
Huh. Maybe. But I think it's more about that fascination with cheating death, with the what if.
Speaking of clues, those photographs in Final Destination 3, man, creepy.
Oh, absolutely. Not only do they know they're gonna die, they get hints. How W? Adds a whole other level.
It's like death is taunting them, saying, yeah, I'm coming for you, and here's a preview.
Adds to that unsettling feeling that death isn't just a force, but a being. It has a personality.
Almost like death is enjoying this whole game. That's pretty messed up.
Right, and it underlines what the movies are really getting at. That fighting against the inevitable is, well,
Kind of pointless. Like, no matter what you do, you're going to get got.
it's more about coming to terms with that, with the illusion of control we all cling to.
And that brings us back to the philosophical side, that article you mentioned about the deeper meaning.
Ah, yes, the one arguing these movies are actually profound meditations on existence. Heavy stuff.
I mean, yeah, on the surface, it's teenagers getting off in elaborate ways, but there's more to it.
You can enjoy the spectacle, but also engage with these bigger questions. What is life? What is death?
You're clearly a fan, and you appreciate those deeper layers. What is it about these films that draws you in?
Well, for one, they're well made. The death scenes are creative, the suspense is real. But beyond that,
Beyond that,
they're relatable, even if it's in a dark, twisted way. We all fear death, you know. These movies tap into that.
so it's like a safe space to confront those fears.
Yeah.
A roller coaster through our darkest anxieties.
Something like that. And let's be honest, there's a strange beauty to it all, too. A morbid beauty.
The way the deaths are staged, the chain of events, the music, it's almost artistic.
Right. It's horrifying, but also mesmerizing. Like watching a macabre ballet unfold.
It's messed up, but I get what you mean. There's a craftsmanship there. And don't forget the humor.
Oh, yeah, that dark, morbid humor. It's a balancing act, but they nail it.
Keeps things from getting too heavy, too depressing. It's like
Right.
laughing in the face of death.
Exactly. We can acknowledge the fear, the darkness, but also find a bit of absurdity in it all.
So we've got the premise, the death scenes, the philosophy, the humor. But what about the impact?
Oh, the Final Destination films. They've left a mark on horror, that's for sure.
How so?
Well, that whole idea of cheating death, then being hunted by an unseen force, it's everywhere now.
Like a trope. Other movies and shows have picked it up.
Definitely. And in pop culture, too. Makes you think twice about everyday situations, like you said.
I mean, after watching these, I've definitely given log trucks a wider berth. Just in case,
Yeah. But beyond that, it sparked discussions about fate, about free will. People debate these things online, in articles.
For a horror franchise, that's pretty impressive. It gets people thinking.
It's the power of storytelling. Genre films can be more than just entertainment. They can make you question things.
Makes you wonder, why are these films so rewatchable? You know the deaths are coming, but you still watch.
It's a combination of factors. The creativity, the suspense, the unsettling atmosphere.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You can't look away, even though you know what's going to happen.
Exactly, that morbid curiosity. And maybe by facing our fears in a movie, we gain a little control over them.
Like a cathartic experience.
Maybe. Horror, at its core, is about processing our anxieties, and these films give you a lot to process.
They force you to think about life, death, and everything in between. Not your typical popcorn flick.
Nope. They stick with you, linger in your mind, make you see the world a little differently.
Funny how it can be both terrifying and comforting at the same time. Like a twisted hug from death itself.
Right. It's a reminder that we're all in this together, facing the unknown, but we can find joy along the way. And it's that awareness that death is more than just a thing. It's almost like a player in the game, you know?
Yeah, like it's not just about dying, it's about being messed with by this force that seems to enjoy it.
Right. Like you're trying to cheat this entity that has a sick sense of humor. It's not a fair fight.
And that brings us back to the big question, right? Fate versus free will.
Mm.
Are we really in control?
These movies really make you think about that. Like,
Yeah.
even if you do cheat death, does it matter in the end?
I'm thinking about that new life thing from Final Destination 2, bringing a new life into the world to balance things out.
Yeah. Trying to trade one life for another, like bargaining with death.
But even that doesn't really work, does it? Death still comes knocking.
Yeah.
Are there NEIA rules to this game?
That's the mystery. Each film hints at a pattern, like there's a way to win, but it never quite gives you the answer.
So we're left wondering, is there NEIA escape? Or are we all just, like, pawns in death's grand scheme?
Those are the questions that keep you coming back to these films, even after you know what happens.
It's unsettling, but also kind of freeing. If we can't control it, maybe all we can do is live in the moment.
Exactly. Appreciate the time we have. And that's a powerful message, even coming from a horror movie.
It does.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the legacy of these films. They've definitely stuck with people.
Oh, for sure. They've influenced horror, pop culture, even the way we think about everyday life.
People are more aware of their surroundings, maybe a little more cautious, thanks to Final Destination.
Right. You see a log truck, you can't help but think about that scene. It's ingrained in our minds.
But it's more than just the scares, it's the conversations they spark. About fate, about our own mortality.
And that's what makes them stand out. They're entertaining, sure, but they also make you think. Challenge your beliefs.
Before we wrap up, I have one last question for everyone listening. Would you want a premonition?
Whoa, now that's a thought.
To know how and when you'll die, would it change how you live? Would you even want to know?
Heavy stuff. But that's what Final Destination does, right? Makes you confront those uncomfortable truths.
It doesn't give you easy answers. It leaves you with more questions than you started with, and that's powerful.
It's a journey into the dark side of human nature, into our deepest fears, and it's a wild ride.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the Final Destination franchise. Thanks for joining us on this morbid adventure.
Always a pleasure to dissect these films. They never get old.
And hey, if you haven't seen them yet, I highly recommend giving them a watch. Just, maybe avoid log trucks for a while.
Sound advice.
Stay safe out there, folks. And remember, fate is always watching.